Good morning and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living, Midtown Atlanta, where you are welcome. Such is the nature of life that all it wants and all it asks is the opportunity to appear. You are that opportunity, and so am I, and so it is. Whoever you are, whatever path brought you here today, please know that you are welcome and celebrated. We know who you are. You're an individualized expression of the divine life in which we all live. Your life's opportunity to be unique and wonderful. Whatever your ethnic background, religious affiliation, and however you know yourself or describe yourself, we're glad you're joining us here today. You're welcome to be a part of this community in whatever way serves you. Here's our vision statement. We are a strong, open, globally connected community centered on the clarity of principle. Through teaching, service, and practice, we create a safe and respectful environment that supports healthy spiritual growth. And for a better understanding of who we are and what we teach, listen now to our Declaration of Principles as written by our founder, Ernest Holmes.
A few of the declaration of principles we live by.
I believe in one God, one absolute power, and first cause to all things.
I believe that this power is perfect love, and it creates out of a desire to express love.
I believe all thought is creative, and how I choose to think creates my personal experience.
I believe in the unity of all life, and the immortality of the individual soul forever unfolding.
I believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of God to all.
And so it is.
So grateful, hey.
So, a practitioner is someone who's demonstrated the ability to use spiritual practice and spiritual laws to bring about changes in their lives. They've also demonstrated that they know how to bring about these changes in others when asked. Licensed by Centers for Spiritual Living, they're available to you to provide spiritual guidance and support in those areas you're looking for help in. You can contact them through our website, cslmidtown.org. And today we've got one of our amazing practitioners to share good ideas and an affirmative prayer called a spiritual mind treatment. Welcome, Maya Fuller.
Thank you, Vance. Greetings, CSL Midtown. Happy holiday week. Happy Juneteenth, happy Father's Day, and happy third week of June. This month, we are exploring the theme Higher, Deeper Love. And this week, we move into the collective dimension of that exploration. What does love look like when we zoom out beyond ourselves and our individual relationships and honestly look at what we carry together as communities, as a human family? Today's speaker is going to take us right into the heart of that question. Her talk is entitled Love, Grief, Play, Heal. And in her own words, here is what she says she's bringing today. In a world experiencing an epidemic of loneliness, the glorification of violence, and the resulting crisis of faith, how can we believe in love? Through an authentic and unflinching look at how we feel God has failed us, our broken hearts open 4 doors to a divine and transformative experience, revealing how we can find love right now when we need it the most. So I am looking forward to hearing her. But first, let's take a moment and ground ourselves in truth before we hear Nerissa Street speak. We're going to move into treatment. And I want to invite you to just ground yourself in this moment with me. Let's breathe together and settle in together as we move into our spiritual mind treatment, which I'm going to speak in the first person. I speak in the first person because treatment is personal, and speaking in the first person allows you and invites you to accept whatever words resonate with you, accept them as your own. So just take this time to just take a deep breath in Slowly letting it in and then letting it go. And we'll take another breath in and gently releasing it. And now, if it feels comfortable, just close your eyes softly, or just let your gaze go easy. And gently just begin to turn inward, letting whatever thoughts or cares you brought with you into this moment, just letting them go for now, so that we can just be here and be in this right now moment of this treatment, so we can know the truth for ourselves. Just in a peaceful right now way, we recognize the truth that there is only one life. There is only one love, one presence, and that's in everything. Through everything, beneath everything, showing up as everything, even despite appearances to the contrary. This love, this oneness, this goodness, this presence shows up even in the things that hurt, even in the things that have left a mark, even in the places where I once looked for God and felt like no one was there. That presence was there, and it is here now, and I am held in it completely. I acknowledge today that I have known grief, that there are places in me and in all of us that are shaped by loss, by disappointment, by love that fell short of what we wanted. Some of those wounds are personal. Some go back further than my own lifetime, carried in the bones of those who came before me. I don't look away from any of that today. I allow it to be seen. What grief tells me is that something mattered, that I was open, that I was in it, and that love was there. And love, that love never actually left. Even in the hardest seasons, love was present. It was in the friend who called at exactly the right moment. Love was in the stranger who offered kindness when I had no reason to expect it. It was in every moment of beauty that broke through when I needed it most. A song, a sunrise, a word that landed just right. Love was there, quietly, consistently, refusing to be extinguished. Today I release any story that says I have been abandoned. Any belief that the pain is the final word. It is not. Because on the other side of every dark night, morning comes. It always comes. And the light that meets me there is the same love that was with me in the dark. Steady, patient, and unchanged. That love is not somewhere I have to go. It is here. It is now. It is available to me in every breath. And so I breathe. I opened myself to that breath and I let it in, knowing that God is in the breath. And I'm grateful. Healing is in the breath. And I breathe, and I'm grateful. And I am loved right now, exactly as I am. And so I release this treatment into the law, knowing that it is already so, already done, already mine. And I give thanks and let it be. And so it is.
Welcome back. So, our speaker this morning is Miss Nerissa Street. She's a multi-award winning storyteller and facilitator who writes, directs, and produces stories for thought leadership and community change. Nerissa has advanced training from the Center for Mind-Body Medicine and Trauma Reduction, and she's been featured on TEDx, PBS, and multiple media channels. Nerissa wants to bring back the joy to servant leadership, so she's tackling burnout one heart-centered organization at a time. And she hopes her message today becomes practical medicine. So welcome back, Nerissa. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. So again, thank you so much to the leadership of the Center for Spiritual Living in Midtown for this invitation. I pray that this message contributes to this month's exploration of divine love, specifically how to encounter that love in the beloved community. The title of today's talk is Love, Grief, Play, Heal. It came to me a few months ago as I came to terms with the new direction my life was taking over a year of correction. The phrase described not just what I was experiencing through that year, but it seemed to articulate steps in a bigger context. Today's lesson provides a beautiful opportunity to share it with you. So, as we begin, I invite you to take a deep breath. I ask that you allow these words to land where they need to, so that you experience the healing that you came for. So a little moment of transparency here. I am using a device, and the device feels kind of heavy, and those of you who've watched me before know I like to move around. So I'm going to switch from my device to my piece of paper. So thank you for honoring me as I do that. Okay, so to begin, love is the divine idea of universal oneness. It binds, it unifies, and it harmonizes. If you love humans, it changes your life. But love of God, friends, that love is designed to break your heart. If you're honest, it already has. Many of us were taught, directly or indirectly, to relate to God through conditions. We learn universal laws and spiritual maxims so that we can create the conditions where we are pleasing God. Then we can call ourselves good. And God is good as well. God, if you do this, I will trust you. God, if you remove this pain, I will praise you. God, if you give me what I asked for, I will believe you are good. That kind of relationship may look like devotion, but it's really fear trying to negotiate safety. And this is not because we are bad. This is because we're in pain. Trauma teaches the soul to bargain. Pain wants us, makes us want a God that we can manage instead of a God we can behold. We may call that love, that if our love depends on God behaving according to our terms, it's a transaction, not a relationship. This is where many people experience a crisis of faith. We prayed and the person still passed. We believed and the door still closed. We gave and the money still ran out. We forgave and the wound still ached. The crisis may feel like the end of our faith, but today I want to offer that the crisis may not be the end. The crisis may be the opening. Our crisis of faith is actually an opening to divine love if we are willing to allow an authentic, fully experiential relationship with God. Love, grief, play, and heal are 4 steps of a deeply personal experience that I had with God. If we are open to experiencing them with the beloved community, we all can move past a fraught experience of life into a peace of mind that isn't just known, it's felt. When God breaks your heart, it is to make room for a fuller understanding of itself. And that, my friends, can only happen in community. So the process I'm offering today is called Love, Grief, Play, and Heal. And they're not 4 ways to get your life together. They're 4 steps towards possibility that help us understand how we move from a fear-based, transactional relationship with God into an authentic, awe-inspired, and fully experiential relationship with God. These states of being reveal God differently when they are experienced in the beloved community. The movement of today's lesson is simple. We awaken to love. We tell the truth about our grief. We find the courage to play and experiment in the wilderness, and together we heal. To anchor this process, I want to share a compelling story about the nomadic Jews in Egypt. In the Hebrew scriptures, Pharaoh is more than a power-hungry ruler. Pharaoh is the image of what happens when we believe our mastery is related to our own power. What's going on is the Hebrew people, these nomads, are expanding in his kingdom, and Pharaoh becomes afraid. He turns his fear into a policy, and he turns his anxiety into dominion. Pharaoh mistakes control for God's blessing over his kingdom. I know, right? Control freak here. I'm just being a little honest here. All right. Pharaoh believes if he can manage the bodies, the labor, the birth, the movement, and the fear, he can manage the future. But the God of the Hebrew scriptures turns Pharaoh's violence inside out. What Pharaoh uses to suppress Israel, God uses to expose Egypt. What Pharaoh uses to keep people bound, God uses to make bondage unbearable. When Pharaoh uses to preserve his empire, God uses to begin Israel's journey into true promise. There's a scripture in Exodus, and it says, God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Now, when I read that, I mean, I could do an entire lesson on that line alone, but when you think about it, you wonder why. But when you see further along into the story of the Israelites in Exodus, you understand that a softer Pharaoh was a people that weren't authentic to who they fully are. My mentor used to say it this way: do you really want to be free, or do you just want a better slave master? I know, let me continue here. Egypt is not only a place, Egypt is a pattern. Egypt is the thing that organizes your pain so well that you mistake it for comfort, for home. Egypt may be a relationship, a job, a belief system, a family role, a survival strategy, or even a version of God that keeps you afraid but gives you some structure. We don't cling to Egypt because Egypt is good. We cling to Egypt because Egypt is familiar. That does not make Pharaoh righteous. It makes God sovereign. Pharaoh's hardened heart becomes a place where empire reveals itself, where God reveals that liberation does not begin when the oppressor softens, but when the oppressed finally move. So the first question is, where are you waiting for Pharaoh to soften before you move? Where are you asking for bondage to become more merciful? Where are you asking the old system to bless the version of you that God has called you out of? So let's go through the 4 steps, shall we? Our first step is love. But it is love in its first awakening. This is where we have discovered the spiritual laws and we fall in love with our new identity and our new sense of power. We discover prayer. We discover alignment. We discover intention and manifestation. We discover that our words matter, our choices matter, our body matters, our yes matters, and our no matters. This stage is beautiful and necessary. We need to discover that we're not only what happened to us, we need to discover that God has been speaking in places that we thought were silent. So we fall in love with this idea of God as possibility and with a version of ourselves that is no longer wounded. The misunderstanding is that we may begin to think that spiritual law means spiritual control. We think that if we pray correctly, life will behave. We think that if we align correctly, loss will pass over our house. We think that if we are faithful enough, God will keep the glass from breaking. But this is where love has to mature. Where have you mistaken spiritual power for spiritual control? At some point, God as law lets you down. The formula stops working. The prayer doesn't produce the outcome. The thing that you believe will protect you does not protect you from pain. This can feel like a betrayal. But it may actually be the moment when faith is being invited to grow beyond management into intimacy. When God as law lets you down, you may think that you're losing God and losing your connection to God. But you may actually be losing a version of God that was too small to hold your lived experience. God as formula lets us down. God as transaction lets us down. God as control lets us down. But not because God is absent, but because God is asking to be known beyond what God can do for us. This is a hard turn, y'all. Love that depends on control is not yet free. Love that depends on outcomes is not yet deep. Love that depends on God behaving according to our terms is bargaining. Remember Jacob? The question is, what version of God are you grieving because that could not survive your lived experience? So after our heart breaks, we often discover that God has a purpose for us that is different than we perceived. We may have thought that the purpose was the marriage, the house, the platform, the healing, the promotion, or the proof that our obedience had produced the life that we ordered. But God was not building the life we imagined, y'all. God was building the person that divine love could move through. This doesn't make loss easy. This does not mean that your grief will disappear. This means that the loss and your grief was revealing something you could not see before. With our big life, we thought God was building our comfort, but God was building our capacity. We thought God was building a platform, but God was cementing our presence. We thought God was building our certainty, but God was setting us up for surrender. The purpose may have been to become more available to divine love. The purpose may have been to become more truthful. The purpose may have begun to become more compassionate to yourself and others. The purpose may have been to become less defended. The purpose may have been to become someone through whom love could move. The question is, what if God was not betraying your purpose, but correcting your perception of it? So in this loss, we experience grief. And this is where we need to slow down, because people often want to rush past the grief. We say to people, you know what? You got to be grateful. You know, it could have been worse. But that does not allow us to tell the truth about our grief. We tell people to be thankful, to look on the bright side, that toxic positivity, to trust God's plan and to move on. But before gratitude can benefit us, grief has got to be honored. You can be grateful and you can have grief. You can be grateful that you survived, grateful for the lesson, grateful for the grace, grateful from the unexpected provision, and still you definitely have grief. You have grief over what didn't happen. You have grief over the years that disappeared. You have grief over the things that have changed, the trust that was broken. Grief over the version of yourself that you fell in love with. And a lot of people are living in the denial and anger of grief. Kubler-Ross talks about 5 stages of grief. If you do a little bit of research, you'll see all around you that there's so much chaos because so many people are denying their grief or just angry about it. When grief is not honored, it does not disappear. It leaks. It becomes blame. It becomes control. It becomes narcissism. It becomes panic, performance, numbness, and rage. This bad behavior means that grief needs somewhere to go. This beloved community is the place where grief is welcome. It becomes the place where we stop pretending gratitude means we are not grieving. It becomes the place where we can say, yeah, I'm thankful, but I'm still tender. I believe God is here, but I'm confused. And I am still heartbroken. The question is, what grief have you dressed up as gratitude? Because you thought that being honest about it meant that you were being unfaithful. And so now we're being sent into the wild. This is the place that we have a decision to make. We can move from being paralyzed in our grief to finding meaning in it. And we do this in the wilderness. There's this place where things are raw and unformed. And you may be tempted to step back into this fully formed system. Things are familiar. But in the wilderness, in this place where we don't know everything, we can meet ourselves. And we can form this new world around who we truly are. The wild is not punishment. The wild is the place where the new world has language. This old system can no longer organize us, and the new system has not yet been built. If you remember, or if you know the story, when Egypt is left behind, the Israelites don't walk straight into a finished promised land. They walk into wilderness. They come and they get confronted with themselves and whether or not they are really trusting the God that sent them out. The wilderness matters because it removes the old. Everything was formed around bondage. There were roles, there were tasks, there was survival. In the wilderness, the old architecture no longer tells you who you are. And in the wilderness, you have the opportunity together to play. There's a part of us that craves Egypt because Egypt was predictable. We meet the part of us that wants freedom without formation. We meet the part of us that wants promise without process. We meet the part of us that wants God to deliver us from bondage, but not change the imagination that bondage gave us. The wild and the wilderness is where grief becomes honest. It's where we stop asking only, why did this happen to me? And we begin asking in community, who are we becoming now? What must we build together? What kind of people can hold freedom, can be in love without recreating bondage? What kind of community can carry promise without returning to fear? Where has God sent you into the wild, but you're still waiting for a map? The map that we are searching for is found in each other. This is where the movement, this is where the play, this is where the experimentation, this is where it matters. God sends us into the wild, but we decide whether or not we will engage. We decide whether or not we're going to imagine something new. We can decide whether we want to keep going back to what we knew, or we can decide that we want to do something different. The movement forward into community, into play, is your soul saying, I will not let bondage, I will not let grief, I will not let fear be the architect of my imagination. I will not wait for certainty before I become available to God. Moving out of grief does not mean abandoning what you feel. It means allowing grief to become a doorway instead of a prison. It means refusing to let pain be the final author of our imagination. It means deciding that this place may be raw, but it is also creative. And so we play forward. And sometimes you think that play means that grief is not serious. But play is sacred experimentation. Play is imagination returning to the body. Play together is the courage to ask, what else could be true? This is how we begin to form a new world around us. When the world that was cracked open by our heartbreak no longer serves. In the wilderness, play matters because people have to practice freedom before freedom feels familiar. Let me say that again. People have to practice freedom before freedom becomes familiar. I like to say it gives us a muscle memory of joy and possibility. And it's easier to create from memory than it is from imagination. This is why storytelling matters. We do not tell stories only to explain what happened. We tell stories to discover what God may be making possible through what happened. We experiment with new patterns. We try on new ways of gathering, of resting, of speaking, of forgiving, of repairing, of imagining, of working. We ask how free people eat, how free people rest, how free people make decisions, how free people carry grief without building another place of bondage. Play is not a denial of grief. Play is what happens when grief has been welcomed deeply enough that imagination can rise up again. It's how the beloved community begins to create meaning together. The question is, what could we create in community if all of our grief was welcome? And so from that play and from that call to community, we begin to heal. Healing is not looking at the glass and pretending it was never broken. Healing is the light refracting off of the new angles. These broken pieces don't disappear. They become part of our new lives. They catch light differently. They show us angles of God we could not see when everything was whole. We wanted God to prevent our heartbreak, and that makes sense. But we also discover God in the people who help us put the pieces back together. We discover God in the hands that do not rush us through our grief. We discover God in the new stories we learn to tell. We discover God in the laughter that bubbles up and in the community that does not require us to pretend. Together, we can heal and we find pieces of God in each other. Through faithful imagination and embodied practice, we find that God is in each one of us in the ways that grief opened us up to see. And that means that peace is not an idea paved over with toxic positivity. It means that peace is a felt reality. It's not just known. It's not just believed. It's embodied. So today, we're not leaving with a formula. We're leaving with an invitation. Love, grief, play, heal. Love is where we awaken to divine possibility. Grief is where we tell the truth about where we have had heartbreak. Play is where the imagination returns and we find community. And healing is where we see God again. When God breaks your heart, it's to make room for a fuller understanding of itself. And it's funny. You know, when you break a glass in a room, you find shards everywhere. Many times, years later, you'll find shards again. And so I encourage you, to whatever place that grief is still pricking you, I encourage you to see it as an opening to a newer understanding of who you are, who God is, and what divine love is calling you to a community. I want you to stop waiting for your grief to heal before you believe God is real again. The healing comes in community. May we engage with each other. May we create meaning together. May we find love together. And may we become brave enough, tender enough, and honest enough to meet God with each other.
Thank you, Reverend Nerissa. Awesome. So, let's do our new minister, Sacred Covenant Easy Prayer. This is the abbreviated version of this. You can find the full version on the website. There's only one life. This life is God, and I am one with it. I know my new minister as a revelation of Spirit, as principle, fulfilling God's promise. For principle is not bound by precedent, but it operates according to law for those who align with it. Together with my community, I see my new minister inspiring spiritual oneness through wisdom, love, and authenticity. One that is awakened to inner wisdom, communicates universal truth, and serves as a conduit of divine love, wisdom, and healing energy. One that recognizes the inherent wholeness within all beings and offers teachings grounded in spiritual principles to cultivate inner transformation. One that extends love, Spirit's transformative power into the wider community, fostering connections that heal and uplift individuals on their unique journeys. As I accept the highest expression of a new minister into my life, I know that they will be revealed in a way that expresses Spirit and serves the highest good of all touched by their presence. I am grateful, for God is good, and so it is. Now it's time for our conscious giving. And if you're being fed out of the messages that we are bringing to you each and every week, we would appreciate your contributions if you're not already contributing. You can donate at cslmidtown.org/donate or scan the QR code that comes up on the screen. Either way works. And here's our affirmation of prosperity. I live in a universe of abundance. As I freely and joyfully give, I join in the divine flow. And all that I share with life returns to me multiplied abundantly. And so it is. Next week, we've got online. Jeffrey Radcliffe is going to be our speaker next week. Don't have his talk title yet. I still had Nerissa's information on this sheet. And if you want a deeper understanding of who we are and what we do, there's an adult study group that's going through the Science of Mind textbook at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings. You can join them on our Zoom channel. Go to cslmidtown.org, scroll down to the bottom, and click on the Zoom link. You can also do that for right now if you want to join us and you're not already on Zoom for a discussion with Nerissa about her talk this morning. Should be pretty interesting. So with that, let's do our affirmation of life. I leave this place now knowing something better than I knew before. I go forth into the world with a heart full of love and a mind full of good sense. I look at the world in a greater way, knowing that I have within me everything I need to create the life I desire. I give thanks for this understanding, and I am grateful for the Spirit of life that lives through me. And so it is. Thanks, everybody. Join us over on Zoom, or we'll see you next week online.